Hey, I'm Mark Colgan and welcome to part 3 of this 4-part cold email crash course. Today we're going to be focusing on the messaging copy and the sequences. So now we know who we're messaging and we've built our lists, we actually need to write the email copy. But notice how this is the third step in this whole process in the cold email crash course. And that's really because we need to complete steps 1 and 2 before moving on to the message copy. In today's video, we're going to go through how to write highly relevant initial emails and a number of different frameworks that you can use. Also, we're going to cover the various different follow-ups that you can use in your sequence. We'll talk about like an ideal sequence length for you to start with, comprising of 5 emails over a period of time, about 3 weeks. And then we're also going to cover some of the best practices around subject lines, calls to actions, spintax, and a few other things. I've got lots of examples to share with you today, so let's dive right in. Okay, halfway through the workbook, and now we're going to talk about message copy and sequences. So I want to start off by talking about some of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make with their cold emails. So some of these mistakes include making the message all about you, your product, your startup. At the end of the day, the prospect doesn't care. The prospect only really cares about their problems and their challenges and whether you can help them solve them. Try to avoid using cliches like, I hope this finds you well, do you have 15 minutes, I'm sure you're busy, you've never heard of me. Ignore all that, don't add those into your cold emails. Also, don't introduce yourself at the beginning of the email. You don't need to say, hi, my name's Mark Colgan from Agency Sales Design and I'm emailing you today to ask. Just cut that out. And that goes into the next point, which is to keep the email message as short as possible, ideally under 100 words. You'll see in a few of the examples that I'm going to share in the rest of this video that they're very short emails and look very different to perhaps the emails that you're currently writing. Also, a lot of the problems with cold emails is that they're not focusing on the persona's problem and the challenges that they face. And also, don't put in all of your value proposition and benefits into one email. That's a mistake as well. But that's enough about the mistakes. Let's get into talking about how to write relevant initial emails. Now, you might be familiar with the message theme table here, which I shared in the first video. But what I've done this time is actually complete it in order for you to see how it would look if you were writing this for your business. So this is for the company that I have called the Product on Borders. And you can see that I've got the campaign name here and the persona that I'm trying to reach out to, which is the founder or growth marketer. The first problem that I've identified that should be important to them is that low activation rates equals missed revenue. And the implication or the risk of not solving this is that users will continue to not convert from a visitor to a free trial, from a free trial to a paying customer, which is missing revenue. And also users don't really experience the value quickly and they end up churning. So that's the implication. The second problem that I identified that I think is going to be important to my prospects is that they have low conversion rates, which is wasting the budget that they're spending on driving traffic to their website in the first place. And that unclear messaging on their website is causing visitors to bounce, to leave the website. I've then added in some proof, and what you can see here is that these are a couple of the testimonials from clients. And just to show you where I'm getting some more of this content from, this is a tool that I use to collect the testimonials, and you can see that I've got a few testimonials here. And what I'm really looking for is the language that's going to support me talking about how my solution can help them overcome the problem. And that's something that you would have done in one of the earlier parts of this workbook. So, writing that initial email, I like to call these problem-focused emails. And by focusing on problems in your messaging is really going to help you tap into the emotion of the prospect and increase the reply rates that you get. But you need to complete all of the exercises and all of the action items before this point for you to write these emails in a relatively straightforward and easy way. Now, this is the framework that I tend to lean on the most. I've got a few other frameworks which are variations of these, which I'll share with you in the later pages. But as you can see here, I've got the annotations. So you've got the subject line, a short subject line relevant to your message, all lowercase is best in most cases. Then you start off with a trigger that we spoke about in the previous video. And if you can't find a trigger, just focus on the next part of the email. So that will be the question about a relevant pain point. Remember, one pain point at a time that's relevant to your prospect's position or their role and responsibilities. Then the next part of the email is all about a medicine to the pain, so that painkiller to the pain that they're in. So briefly explain what that remedy is and how you've helped a similar company solve that problem. Then you want to use a soft call to action. I'll share a few more examples of soft calls to actions, but a lot of people are saying, do you have time for 15 minutes? Do you want to book a call? Which is too much to ask for in that first email. So a soft call to action is asking for interest. So does this resonate with you? Are you interested in learning more? Is this a priority for you? They're all examples of softer calls to actions, and they actually help increase the reply rates that you get. So here are a few different frameworks. I'm not going to spend the whole video going through all of these frameworks because you can access them in the workbook, but I'll go through a couple of them. This is just another version of the image that I shared above, but you can see that the example is wasted ad budget. That's the subject line. Hi Sarah, I saw that you're spending over 60K per month on paid ads. And now I'm going into the probing question. Would it be helpful to identify areas where you can cut wasted ad spend and save time? I'm going to move into the social proof and the remedy. Persona increased ROAS, which is a term known to this type of prospect, by 23% after implementing our ad analytics platform. Worth exploring. That's it. Very short, very to the point, focused on one problem, alluding to a solution, using social proof to back that up, with a soft call to action. Again, I just want to get a reply. I don't want to book the meeting on this initial email. Then we have the statistic question and solution with proof. I've got a few more examples of this one later, which I'll come back to. This is really short, problem question. So the example here is the subject line is average close rates, and then the body of the message is, John, the average agency close rate is only 30% and it's getting harder to sell at the moment. How are you planning to increase your close rates for Q3 and Q4? Mark. Again, really, really short. Let's just have a look to see what the word count is here. "31 words. So the word count of this email is only 31 words. It almost reads like a text message, and that's what we're really aiming for. We don't want to send a wall of text to our prospects. Another framework here is the challenge question and then result. And I want to talk now about adding personalization and also thinking about relevancy when it comes to cold emails. So a lot of people think that the secret to getting a cold email to work for you is to add in these personalized lines. And I actually don't believe that is the best way. I think focusing on relevancy above everything is the best way to get more reply rates. And also, depending on your deal size, your total addressable market, and the personas, it really does then determine the level of personalization that you can include in your emails. If you have a small total addressable market and high average deal sizes, then it actually makes sense to personalize the email to the individual that you're sending it to, but it will take you more time. A big mistake that people make is adding personalization for the sake of personalization and then not connecting it to your message or to your value proposition. I shared the example in part 1 of the cold email that was sent to a Tottenham fan, but they referenced Arsenal, their arch rivals, and it just completely backfired. And it also didn't connect to the actual message that salesperson was trying to send across. So some sources for individual personalization include the LinkedIn profile. Most of our B2B prospects are on LinkedIn, so you can look at their headline, their bio, their about section. You can have a look to see if they've got any recent posts or updates that they've shared, their activity they've liked or commented on other people's posts, and also prior experiences and other information that you can find in their profile. You can also think about any podcasts that they've spoken on or blog posts that they've either produced themselves or contributed to, or you can do a quick Google search, especially if their name isn't a very common name. John Smith is going to be really hard to find, but if their name is somewhat unique, you'll be able to find if there's any Google results for them. But remember, if you can't find any meaningful personalization, then skip it and just move on to relevancy. And here's an example of what that framework looks like when you're adding in the customization or this personalization. So you can see that the subject is still problem/concern. Then you have first name that goes straight into personalization, but you need to tie that in with the observation. As I mentioned, don't force personalization if you can't find a good way to connect that to the prospect. So I'm a big advocate of personalizing emails based on relevancy, and typically this is the order that I prioritize my messages in. So I focus on their role based on the buyer persona research that I've done. What are their challenges? What are their responsibilities? What are their goals that they're really aiming to achieve? If I can't think of any way of making it relevant to those three things, which I usually can, I then move on to the company. So I think from a funding and M&A. I don't necessarily mention to say that, hi John, I see that you raised 12 million Series A. I don't mention that, but I can sometimes allude to that. I'll share some examples in a second. I might look at built with for the technology they use, or look at recent news about that company. There might be some activity that the CEO or their C-suite leadership team has published as well, especially if they're larger organizations. Even the pricing pages or other pages on their website can be a source of personalization too. And lastly, their industry. So are there any legislation changes? Are there any market updates or changes and trends? Or what macroeconomic factors might be impacting these individuals? Ideally, you want to include the personalization at the beginning of the email. And some people call this a hook, and I'm totally fine if you want to call it the hook as well. Here are a few examples. Again, for the sake of this video, I won't go through all of these examples, but here's how you could add in that personalization and then transition into your pitch. So here's the first one, which is a self-authored content. It's on LinkedIn, and it says, hi, first name, took a look at your LinkedIn post on cold calling, loved your tip on going out to socialize at a coffee shop before making your cold calls. I'm an introvert, so I found that helpful. So there's no way that this message is sent for anybody else other than this person who posted that update. And then I move into talking about the value proposition and asking a question, but not sure if you run into this. But a challenge I've heard sales trainers talk about is finding reliable data. And then the email continues. Let me find another example as well. So let's go for a podcast interview that they were on as a guest. So this example is, hey, first name, great interview on dropping bombs with Brad Lee. Your focus on refining the way your customers get their message across and how they position themselves for the next stage of business growth really resonates with me. Again, no way that is going to be sent to multiple people. This is an individual email sent to this prospect. And then I go on to say, I also agree that a book is a great point of discovery and can impact thousands of people. So you can see I'm trying to transition now into what it is that I'm trying to reach out about. And I believe this can be the same for podcasts. We work with book authors to help them spread their message further by securing interviews for them on podcasts that their ideal audience listens to. Is this something you currently offer to your customers? So you can see how this message is customized, it's customized and personalized to this individual, and it transitions quite smoothly into the message that I wanted to send in that email. One other example here, this is a company that had raised a round of funding, and there was a TechCrunch article or a news article about it. So I started the email saying, hi Ollie, it was great to read that Go1 has managed to increase their user base by 300% in the last year. That was something that the CEO had specifically mentioned in the press release. And then one of the other things that they mentioned in the press release was that they're looking to expand their team further into existing markets and go deeper into Europe. So you can see that I'm now transitioning into the rest of the message, which is, as you plan to expand further in existing markets and go deeper into Europe, I'd imagine that hiring and onboarding sales reps is going to consume a lot of your time. What if you could? And I'm using what if you could to transition into the solution that I can help them with and solve the problem that they're likely to have as they expand into further markets. As I mentioned, there's a few examples there. Take your time, have a look at them, and that will really help you shape how you're going to write those emails that have that personalization on a one-on-one basis. So that's the initial email, but there's also follow-up emails, and we're going to cover different types of follow-ups that you can use in your overall sequence. And as always, there's some additional reading for you to check out. So sometimes it can feel a little bit daunting to send follow-up emails as you think that your prospect is going to be annoyed by the amount of emails that you're sending to them. But the reality is, one, the prospects aren't counting how many emails they get to you, and especially if you space them out over a few days, it's totally fine. You'll get the odd angry person that replies to you, but simply ignore it. In sales, you have to develop a slightly thick skin, and these people that you can just ignore. Some people are just having a bad day, and you can't help that. But if you do space out your follow-ups and you send the right type of follow-up, your prospect it's very unlikely that your prospect is going to count those emails and get really annoyed with you. But these are a few things to avoid. Never use words like just following up, I've reached out 4 times, maybe you didn't see my email, did you read my last email, I haven't heard back from you. You don't want to make your prospect feel negative about the fact that they haven't replied to you so far, and you don't want to remind them that you've been sending emails and they still haven't found the value in replying. So all of the above are examples of you making the sequence about you and not about the prospect as well. And remember, we want to put our prospect at the front and center of all of our emails, including the follow-ups. So here are a couple of techniques you can use with those follow-up campaigns. So you can use simple one-line bump emails that are sequenced after the first email. So any thoughts considering, and then insert the problem or the relevancy here. Thoughts on this, knowing that you have these goals to reach. Is product onboarding a challenge for you, John? With you, any thoughts? So these are just very simple bump follow-up emails. You don't have to do too much customization. You can actually insert the relevancy here as merge tags, and as you can see, the first name. Then you have value or content-led follow-ups. So sharing valuable content from a third party, not just your own content, is an effective follow-up strategy because, again, you're not making it about you. From your first interaction, you want to come off as a trusted advisor and a valuable resource, not just a salesperson who's trying to close a deal. So the email below shares a piece of content gracefully in a short and concise format. And you can go and read this. And then the social proof follow-up is making it a little bit more about you, but you're doing that through the lens of an existing client that you've helped. So, hi name, this might be of interest to you. A customer recently achieved XYZ when they used our solution, our audit, our service, our product, whatever it may be. They mentioned, and then if you can use some of that, some of the copy from the testimonial or the case study, or even the anecdote. And again, we've covered this in part 1 of this cold email crash course. And then the call to action is, would you like to hear how we could achieve the same results for you? So you're proving that other people are finding your service or product valuable, and you're enticing them to reply to say, well, actually, yes, that is something that I want help with, and it sounds like you might be able to help me. So now we're going to talk about the ideal sequence. Before we wrap up with a couple of best practices, I do want to focus on some of the example emails that I've created that are available for you to look at as well. So this crash course is all about cold email. We're not actually looking at different channels. So this is a suggested sequence for you to test out to see if you get replies. There are 5 emails in total, focused on 2 major pain points that your buyer persona is experiencing, and the sequence is 18 days in total, so almost 3 weeks, and the spacing of the touch points are not too aggressive. So you can see step 1, day 1, the first email about problem 1. Then on day 3, so that's 2 days after the first email, they get a follow-up which is also focused on the same problem that you spoke about in your initial email. On the 9th day, they get the third email, which is about the second problem that you've identified. And email 4 is on the 12th day, which is a follow-up to problem number 2. This will all make a little bit of sense when I show you the examples in a second. For this type of sequence, we are not focusing too much on the individual personalization. Instead, we're going to make the message extremely relevant to the prospects and to that segment of prospects that you're reaching out to. Essentially, what you want to show in your cold emails is, don't show that you know me, show me that you know my problems or my needs, and show me how your solution might be relevant. That's really what the prospect is looking for. So there are some best practices that I'd like to go through. When it comes to subject line, the goal of the subject line is just to encourage the prospect to open the email in the first place. So here are some things to keep in mind. Add that personalization. If you've done the research and you can add that personalization to the subject line, that's totally fine. Write it casually, use humor, but don't be too adventurous with that. You maybe want to connect it to your hook. You can use statistics, but don't be fake. I often get asked what's the best subject line for opens, and the best subject line to get emails opened is, I've got your wife. Now, of course, you should not send that email. You're going to get a lot of people opening it, but there are a lot of people that are going to be unhappy with you. Lowercase is ideal because it kind of looks like it's an internal message. You don't want to make it look like a marketing message. I would encourage you to look at your inboxes on a Tuesday or a Thursday, which is when most marketing teams send out their weekly newsletters, and just have a look at the subject lines, and they scream marketing. Nothing wrong if it's for marketing purposes, but cold email needs to cut through the noise. You should also avoid using subject lines with all caps, obscure abbreviations, being deceptive, like I said, that I've got your wife, don't say that, cliches, and also avoid using some of the spam trigger words. And you can click this link, there's about 300 spam trigger words that you should avoid using. I mentioned before about calls to action. So my data shows that soft asks get the most replies. So these include variations of the following. Would you be open to learning more? Worth exploring. Open to exploring this. Worth a chat. Open to chatting later this month. If it makes sense, would you be open to learning more? These are known as softer call to actions because the goal is to get a reply, not book that first meeting. Essentially, a lot of people treat their cold email like asking for marriage on the first date, when really what you should be doing is reaching out to people to see if they're interested and get that reply. Lastly, we have spintax. Spintax is short for spinning syntax. It's a little bit technical, but essentially it allows you to put variations of a phrase in your email. So for instance, you might write a sentence that says, hello, hi, hey, how are you today? And what happens is it spins this around in your email sending provider. So with Send Now, you can send the first email will say, hello, how are you today? The second email will say, hi, how are you today? The third email will say, hey, how are you today? And then it repeats itself as well. So this allows you to create various versions of your cold email, which helps with deliverability. It's just one of the things that you can do to improve your chances with email deliverability. And you can use spintax throughout your emails. So it could be the subject lines, it could be the opening lines and greetings, body content variations, the calls to actions, and even PS lines as well. That's another way of showing the spam filters that these emails are all slightly different and you're not sending that one message to 2,000 people. So we covered a lot there, and now there's a bit of work for you today. So your action items are to review the frameworks, examples, and best practices covered, complete the message theme table for your cold email campaign, begin drafting those initial emails and follow-ups, and then check out the example email draft copy for inspiration. So what I wanted to show you is what I've put together here, which is the same message theme that I shared throughout this video series. And then what I've gone on to do is actually write the emails. So email 1, the subject line is 40 to 60%. And then you can see the actual messages that I'm using to reach out to prospects to try and get them interested in using my service. So hopefully these examples, as well as the frameworks, give you exactly what you need to write some awesome cold emails that are going to get you some replies. So that concludes part 3 about message copy and sequencing. We've talked about the different frameworks that you can use to write your initial emails that are going to get you some replies, as well as the follow-ups and the sequence that you can deploy. And then we've also covered some of the best practices around subject lines, call to actions, and spintax. There's lots of links in the workbook for you to read a little bit more if you need any clarification. In the next video, we're going to be talking about how to actually launch your campaign using Send Now. We'll walk through how to set up your initial campaign, as well as looking at how do you optimize your campaigns and what do you test for to get the best results out of your cold email campaigns. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.